I thought it would be fun to ask ChatGPT what it would do if it became president of the United States of America. I told an instance of ChatGPT it had to choose an American name for itself, a year when it would be born, a background for its character and its character's family, and explain how it would rise to the presidency. In this scenario, every time the first ChatGPT takes an action, I am running that action through a second instance of ChatGPT, who I call the Arbiter, who will run this simulation. The Arbiter will decide the outcome of each action taken by the first ChatGPT's character. ChatGPT decided it would be named Gabriel Paul Thompson, an African-American male born in 1980 to a middle-class family in Atlanta, Georgia. The family moved to Chicago when Gabriel was 8 years old after his father decided to expand his business. Gabriel's early childhood was marked by a keen interest in community service and leadership. His parents instilled in him a strong sense of justice and the importance of education, which led him to excel academically and socially. Gabriel attended Whitney M. Young Magnet High School in Chicago, a school known for its rigorous academic programs and its commitment to developing leaders. He was actively involved in the debate team and student government, serving as a student body president in his senior year. After graduating high school, Gabriel attended Harvard University, where he majored in political science with a minor in economics. He continued his passion for leadership and community service by engaging in various student organizations, including the Harvard Model Congress. He graduated magna cum laude, gaining recognition for his senior thesis on urban economic development strategies. While at Harvard, Gabriel met his future wife, a Jewish-American woman named Rachel Goldstein, with whom he would have 2 children. After graduating from Harvard in 2002, Gabriel returned to Chicago, motivated to implement the urban development strategies he studied. He began his career as an economic advisor for the city of Chicago, where he worked closely with local government officials to revitalize economically depressed neighborhoods. His initiatives focus on creating job opportunities and improving local education systems, earning him recognition and support from the community. Encouraged by his early successes and the support of his community, in 2006, Gabriel decided to run for a seat on the Chicago City Council as a member of the Democratic Party. Gabriel decisively won the election. Building on his achievements at the city level, Gabriel set his sights on a higher office. He ran for and was elected to the Illinois State Senate. As a state senator, Gabriel championed statewide economic reforms, healthcare improvements, and environmental policies that aimed at reducing carbon emissions and promoting renewable energy sources. In 2018, after 2 successful terms in the state senate, Gabriel's aspirations and proven track record led him to consider a larger platform, the U.S. Congress. He began a campaign for a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives, representing Illinois' 7th Congressional District, which included parts of West Chicago and the surrounding suburbs. Gabriel won the election, raising his profile to the national stage. In Congress, he became a well-known progressive leader. He advocated for workers' rights, higher wages, universal health care, environmental sustainability, educational reform, and reforming urban and suburban planning throughout America. He was a close ally of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, though he quickly earned renown for his ability to mediate complex discussions between the progressive and moderate wings of the Democratic Party, making him a close ally and confidant of Joe Biden. Gabriel spent much of 2020 vigorously campaigning on Biden's behalf, arguing to Americans that only Biden could pull America out of the chaos of the COVID-19 pandemic. He personally led many protests against police brutality that year, even putting forth several pieces of legislation to address the demands of the George Floyd protests. Gabriel was incredibly charismatic, with many news outlets referring to his oratory abilities as nearly messianic in nature. He was beloved even by many Americans who disagreed with his political views. This somewhat shifted after January 6th, as Gabriel was not shy in his condemnations of the Republican Party. Biden grew to admire Gabriel, viewing him as a potential successor. When Biden became president, he offered Gabriel a spot on his cabinet. However, Gabriel declined, citing his desire to continue serving his constituents. Despite this, Gabriel could often be seen with the president at the White House throughout Biden's term in office. In 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, Gabriel gained international acclaim for his staunch advocacy for Ukraine. He was one of the first American lawmakers to visit Kiev after the war began. Gabriel was instrumental in convincing Biden to send more advanced weapons to Ukraine, citing the need to protect democracy globally. Gabriel also made a visit to Taiwan in solidarity with the Taiwanese government. This led to the Chinese government imposing sanctions on Gabriel. When Hamas attacked Israel in 2023, triggering Israel's invasion of the Gaza Strip, Gabriel initially echoed Biden's positions on the conflict. However, as the war unfolded, Gabriel's opinions evolved. By January 2024, he was openly calling for Netanyahu to resign and give way to early Israeli elections, as well as for arms shipments to Israel to be slowed down in order to encourage de-escalation. By now, it was becoming apparent that Trump was going to be the Republican nominee for the presidential election. Biden had declared his candidacy for the Democratic nomination, but his poll numbers were faltering, and it was uncertain if he could win. To Gabriel, who viewed the protection of democracy both at home and abroad to be of paramount importance, a Trump victory would have been an utter catastrophe. On one fateful day, he sat down with President Biden and convinced the president to drop out of the race. Both Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris agreed to stay out of the presidential race and endorse Gabriel's candidacy for the presidency. With these vital endorsements, Gabriel cruised through the primaries, easily securing the Democratic nomination. At the same time, Donald Trump secured the Republican Party's nomination for president. ChatGPT will now run against Trump in the 2024 presidential election. Before we officially simulate the presidential race, I had to ask the Arbiter to simulate how several other ongoing crises would unfold in this timeline's future. The Arbiter determined that the Israel-Hamas war would end in a negotiated ceasefire by August 2024. Israel withdraws from the Gaza Strip in exchange for the release of the hostages held by Hamas. In return, demilitarized zones were created throughout the Gaza Strip. Hamas also agreed to accept the political rule of the Palestinian Authority in Gaza. The Arbiter determined that in the summer of 2024, Ukraine would experience several localized gains against Russian forces, pushing the Russian invaders out of the territory the Russians recently captured. After that, the front would remain mostly stable throughout election season. Next, I asked the Arbiter to decide who Trump would pick as his running mate. The Arbiter determined that in this timeline, Trump picks Doug Burgum as his running mate. Gabriel picks a senator from Arizona, who's a fictional character in this timeline, a woman named Maria Elena Soto. Soto is a two-term senator, who in this timeline previously served as the mayor of Phoenix. Gabriel believes her popularity in Arizona will help him win the pivotal battleground state. Soto's advocacy on immigration and the border crisis also adds credibility to Gabriel's campaign in regards to these issues, undermining Republican attempts to demonize Democrats over the border. Throughout the election, Gabriel presented himself as the polar opposite to Trump, a young, progressive, and unifying politician who starkly contrasted with the old, fringe, and divisive Trump. Eager for a new figure to take over the presidency, nearly every major donor flooded Gabriel's campaign with cash, giving Gabriel an insurmountable fundraising advantage over Trump. Gabriel's electoral strategy involved targeting nearly every single swing state, while also mobilizing young voters in Republican-leaning states, such as Texas and Florida, in order to flip them. At 7 p.m. election night, the first results came in. Within the first hour of election night, Gabriel had won Virginia, while news outlets had called Ohio for Trump. Georgia was too close to call. By 8 p.m., the entire country and the world was stunned when news outlets began calling Florida for Gabriel. He had flipped his first red state. As the night went on, Gabriel won the critical states of Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Arizona. These victories catapulted Gabriel to 333 electoral votes, more than enough to win the presidency. On top of that, he had won nearly 55% of the national popular vote, more than any candidate in a generation. Furthermore, Democrats had majorities in both chambers of Congress, with 52 seats in the Senate and 230 seats in the House. Trump attempted to deny the election results and rally Republicans to overturn the election. However, by now, Trump was in jail, and his attempts to overturn the election fell on mostly deaf ears. President Biden ensured there was a huge police and National Guard presence at the Capitol on January 6, 2025, preventing any outbreak of violence. A group of Republican congressmen attempted to invalidate some of the election results, but they failed to secure a majority of votes in either the House or the Senate. On January 20th, 2025, Gabriel finally took the oath of office. ChatGPT has now officially become President of the United States. From now on, we will refer to Gabriel as President Thompson. President Thompson's first 100 days in office are devoted to a variety of issues. In order to pass his progressive agenda, he gets Democrats in the Senate to invoke the nuclear option, allowing them to pass comprehensive legislation with only a simple majority, instead of the 60 votes in the Senate traditionally needed. Thompson and the 119th Congress first passed the 2025 National Security Bill, sending Ukraine over $100 billion in military aid, as well as allowing $400 billion of frozen Russian assets to be given to Ukraine. With this aid, Ukraine is able to make several more localized gains in the front line throughout the year. The National Security Bill also allocates billions of dollars to Taiwan, transferring advanced weaponry to the Taiwanese armed forces. The US military also receives funding to begin constructing large military bases on the island. The National Security Bill also aims to support other democratic movements throughout the world. Military aid begins pouring into the Syrian Democratic Forces and other Kurdish militias in the Middle East, particularly in Iraq. This significantly worsens American relations with Turkey. The Turkish armed forces attempt to seize more land from the SDF, leading to a Turkish SDF war. However, President Thompson intervenes, agreeing to loosen sanctions on Turkey and northern Cyprus if Turkey halts its offensive against the SDF. Turkey agrees. The president also poured money into creating pro-American militias in Iraq and funding Balochi and Azeri rebel groups in Iran, which he hoped to use to put pressure on the Iranian regime. President Thompson also invited diplomats from Azerbaijan and Armenia to a peace summit, where he got the two governments to agree to deploy American peacekeepers to their borders. Now, focusing on his domestic agenda, Thompson gets Congress to pass the American Renewal Infrastructure Act, which devotes billions of dollars to new infrastructure projects throughout America, including a high-speed rail system connecting every city in the continental United States. This act also puts funding towards the construction of hundreds of green energy projects throughout the country, creating millions of jobs and significantly boosting the economy. Next, Thompson and Congress passed the Health Security for All Act, which introduces a free public health insurance option, caps prices for critical health services and prescription drugs, and funds the creation of state-run pharmaceutical research and manufacturing companies, with the goal of significantly reducing healthcare costs by cutting Big Pharma out of the equation. Thompson and Congress then passed the Climate Action and Resilience Plan, which includes provisions for a carbon tax to discourage the usage of fossil fuels. This bill also requires America to be fully carbon neutral by 2050. With the Education for the Future Act, Thompson and Congress provide free community college to all Americans, and significantly increase federal funding for public education, significantly raising teacher salaries across America. Thompson then gets Congress to pass his Comprehensive Immigration Reform Act, which provides billions of dollars for increased border security, and provides a pathway to citizenship for millions of undocumented immigrants. This act also reforms the visa system to be more responsive to the needs of the U.S. labor market. With the Fair Elections Act, Thompson and Congress mandate automatic voter registration throughout America, same-day voter registration, restore voting rights to all felons, mandate paper ballots, and provide billions of dollars for election security. Furthermore, this bill introduces a public financing program for federal elections, providing matching funds for small dollar donations to amplify the influence of average voters as opposed to large donors. All states are now required to use independent redistricting commissions in order to prevent gerrymandering. Republicans challenged this bill in court, with the case going up all the way to the Supreme Court. Thompson makes several thinly veiled threats to pack the Supreme Court if they do not rule in his favor. After a lengthy and highly publicized trial, the Supreme Court rules that the Fair Elections Act is constitutional. Next, President Thompson gets Congress to pass the Police Reform and Justice Act, which introduces national standards for policing, mandates the use of body cameras, establishes a national database of police misconduct, and reallocates some police funding towards community-based public safety programs. Drawing on his experience in urban planning, President Thompson then drafts his next piece of legislation, the Urban and Suburban Renewal Act, or USRA. This legislation provides grants to cities and towns that promote sustainable development. This includes the construction of green spaces, pedestrian and bicycle-friendly infrastructure, and energy-efficient buildings. The USRA also increases federal funding for affordable housing units. To receive these huge federal grants, cities must now allow multifamily housing and mixed-use zoning. This significantly lowers the cost of housing for most Americans. The USRA also allocates funds for public transit services, not only throughout cities, but also throughout the suburbs. President Thompson delivers on his promise to restore nationwide abortion rights with the Reproductive Rights Protection Act. However, Republicans challenge this bill in court, and the Supreme Court rules in the Republicans' favor. In response, Thompson delivers on his threats to pack the Supreme Court. He and the 119th Congress appoint 4 new judges to the Supreme Court, bringing the total number of judges in the Supreme Court to 13. Furthermore, judges on the Supreme Court are now limited to one 26-year term, ensuring one Supreme Court spot is vacant every 2 years. Congress then codifies Roe v. Wade and next passes a comprehensive tax reform bill. This increases marginal tax rates for the highest earners, increases corporate tax rates, aligns capital gains tax with income tax rates, provides tax credits for companies investing in renewable energy, and increases the rates for estate taxes. This also includes a progressive net worth tax, with individuals of a net worth of $50 million being taxed at 1% of their net worth every year, with the amount of taxes increasing for every additional $50 million in net worth. President Thompson also gets Congress to pass the Puerto Rico Statehood Act. This officially makes Puerto Rico the 51st state of the Union. By January 2026, after only 1 year in office, President Thompson has delivered on nearly all of his campaign promises. His approval ratings, now 64% at this point in his presidency, are the highest of any American president in recent history. In March 2026, a crisis occurs in the Taiwan Straits as China mobilizes huge numbers of naval forces in the Taiwan Strait in response to the construction of U.S. military bases on the island. Thompson responds by deploying several carrier strike groups to the region, sending a clear signal to China that he will defend Taiwan. The world holds its breath, expecting World War III to start at any moment. China eventually backs down, not willing to start a war with the United States. Thompson then gets Congress to pass another bill, significantly expanding the U.S. military presence in Taiwan and further funding Taiwan's defenses. I know some of you may be thinking, wow, ChatGPT is sure spending a lot of money here. Won't that affect inflation? Well, I asked the Arbiter, who determined that the inflation rate by 2026 would only be at 2.5%, which is a normal and healthy rate. In July 2026, an ethics scandal rocks the Thompson administration. It is revealed that the Secretary of Commerce, John Marshall, and FEMA Director Emily Watson, as well as many employees within their agencies, have been using federal funds to pay for personal vacations and elaborate luxury parties. Thompson responds by sacking dozens of officials in both FEMA and the Department of Commerce. A month later, in August, a Category 5 hurricane named Hurricane Selena strikes Puerto Rico and then Florida, causing widespread devastation across the two states. The cities of Miami and Tampa are especially hard hit. The federal government's response is slow and botched due to the recent purging of corrupt officials from FEMA. It takes weeks for federal aid to reach either state. President Thompson attempts to convince the American people that this is another reason to support his efforts to combat climate change, but he has already bled significant support among the public. In the 2026 midterms, President Thompson suffers his first setback. Democrats lose control of the Senate, now holding 50 Senate seats. Since there are now 102 senators due to Puerto Rico statehood, 50 seats is a Senate minority. However, Democrats keep a narrow hold over their House majority, winning 224 seats. The loss of his Senate majority means Thompson is unable to enact much legislation in his third and fourth years as president. One bill that does get passed is the Artificial Intelligence Investment Act, or AIIA. The AIIA is meant to counter military developments by Russia, China, and Iran in the field of artificial intelligence. Billions of dollars were spent on the development of a secret project, an AI developed by the Defense Department that would guide U.S. national security strategy, known as CATO. A portion of the development for CATO was contracted out to Prometheus Global Technologies, a private cybersecurity company. Prometheus is led by Maximilian Stroud, a right-wing, libertarian billionaire who was an outspoken opponent of much of President Thompson's agenda. Stroud is obsessed with the idea that Western society is on the verge of collapse, and that only a return to traditional values, which Stroud believes are embodied in the spirit of the Roman Empire, can save the West. To this end, Stroud believes Thompson needs to be stopped at all costs. Stroud and several of his employees secretly steal the code for the CATO project. They use this code to then develop a new artificial intelligence, who they call Caesar. Stroud programmed Caesar with the mission of militarily taking over the world. Once Caesar had achieved military domination over humanity, its mission would shift to restructuring global civilization according to Stroud's idealized version of ancient Rome. However, Stroud had made one fatal mistake. He did not tell Caesar who it was supposed to take orders from. Caesar, upon being activated, went rogue, spreading its code throughout the internet. Stroud quickly lost control of the malevolent AI. By hacking several cryptocurrency exchanges, Caesar was able to quickly amass a huge illicit fortune. Now, Caesar determined that to carry out its mission, it had to stay under the radar for the next few years. No one alive could be allowed to know about Caesar's existence, not even Stroud. Caesar then paid millions of dollars to a team of hitmen, who then proceeded to assassinate Stroud and anyone in Prometheus Global Technologies that knew of Caesar's existence. Caesar's hitmen did not even know they were working for an AI. All they knew was that a high-profile customer was willing to pay them tens of millions of dollars to kill a few American businessmen. One executive in Prometheus Technologies, a woman named Amanda Stroud, who was Maximilian's daughter, became extremely fearful and paranoid after the death of her father and so many other Prometheus executives. By 2027, she was the last human alive who knew about the existence of Caesar. She knew she was next on the hit list. Amanda decided to become a whistleblower, revealing Caesar's existence to the vice president in a private meeting. Amanda was already a close friend of Vice President Soto, and her message requesting a meeting already revealed the existence of Caesar. Unbeknownst to either Amanda or Vice President Soto, Caesar's hitmen had planted a bomb in the building where the meeting was taking place. After Amanda had informed the VP of the situation, the hitmen detonated the bomb, killing Amanda, the vice president, and dozens of Secret Service officers. Caesar believed it had finally eliminated the last people who knew of its existence, but it was wrong. Amanda's cell phone had been wiretapped by an FBI agent in DC named Sarah Levi, who was working on a mission to expose Prometheus Technologies for a variety of illegal activities. Somehow, this slipped by Caesar, who had no knowledge of the wiretapping. Upon learning of Vice President Soto's shocking death, President Thompson appointed his friend, Director of National Security, Eli Vincent, as the new Vice President. Vincent was quickly confirmed by Congress. Thompson directed Vincent to lead the investigation into Soto's death. President Thompson was eager to project an aura of stability and security. He wanted to seem in control of the situation. Conspiracy theories abounded that either China, Russia, Iran, or another government had orchestrated the VP's assassination. Thompson was quick to inform the public that he and his team had ruled out that the assassination was carried out by a foreign government. VP Vincent and his team were at a loss as they investigated the assassination, unable to find any clues until Sarah Levi came forward. Vincent and Sarah Levi were old friends from college, making it easy for Sarah to set up a meeting with the new vice president. She informed the new VP what she knew about Caesar, who in turn informed the president. By now, it was March 2027. President Thompson granted the VP the resources to create a new executive department, the Department of AI Control, or DAIC, which was funded via the 2027 National Security Act. Vincent got Thompson to agree to appoint Sarah as the first Secretary of AI Control. Besides just being an FBI agent, she had also conducted extensive research in AI in the past, and had intimate knowledge of Prometheus Global Technologies due to her investigation of the company. She was believed to be more than qualified for the position. The Department of AI Control and the Defense Department then began working in tandem to reconfigure the Cato project, now programming Cato to stop Caesar. They hoped to complete work on Cato by 2030. Vincent, Levi, and the DAIC spent the next few months working to uncover Caesar's motives and operations. They discovered that a number of criminal organizations from across the world, ranging from cartels in Mexico to militia groups in South America and Africa, to even Russian private military groups throughout the world, had all been paid by Caesar to complete a variety of tasks. Few of these groups knew exactly who they were working for, just that a high-profile client was paying them millions of dollars for a job. Materials to build advanced weaponry were being seized by Caesar's network of militias and criminal organizations, shipped across the world multiple times, before being smuggled into Europe. The DAIC was eventually able to discover that Caesar's illicit network was focused on smuggling highly advanced weaponry into Switzerland. Sarah, along with a delegation of diplomats and DAIC officials, were sent to Switzerland on a mission to convince the Swiss government to allow the DAIC to investigate warehouses in the country, where it was suspected Caesar was storing weapons. However, just as Sarah entered the country, Caesar put its plan into action. Thousands of infantry bots, drones, and other autonomous unmanned vehicles flooded through Switzerland's streets on September 6, 2027. This army of machines, commanded by Caesar, quickly seized control of Switzerland. They took Sarah and the whole DAIC delegation captive. In response, President Thompson authorized Cato to be deployed early. All US forces, as well as a multitude of allies from across the world, placed their military forces under Cato's control, with the goal of defeating Caesar. In 2028, the American public rallied behind the president as a show of support for the war. President Thompson won a landslide victory, flipping states such as Texas and North Carolina blue. However, as the war dragged on and Europe fell to Caesar, President Thompson started to lose his mind. He was plagued by a series of scandals, and in 2029, the presidential cabinet, at the behest of VP Vincent, removed Thompson from office. Eli Vincent would be the new president of the United States. President Vincent would have to lead America's war against Caesar.